and thank you so much for this phenomenal invitation to be a part of this event. I am the music program manager in San Diego Unified School District. In July of this past year, I finished teaching 32 years public school music education, K-12. So I was in the classroom teaching everything you'd imagine, from composition on computers to world music ensembles, and always have believed in composition and the creative realm of students being a part of their learning. So now, as a music program manager, I support 30 teachers directly and an 85 in the entire district, kindergarten through 12th grade. And the beauty of that is getting to see all the possibilities in a district of about 100,000 students. The driving question for this presentation really is, how do we support all students to become independent lifelong learners? And while I wanted that to be the driving question, the reality of this comes down into a different situation, because what happened was when we were asked to go into lockdown, that was in March, we really didn't even start teaching until April 27th, this week. The teachers had about 3 to 4 weeks of prep, just trying to figure out what platforms they wanted to use, what systems they wanted to use. And while my brain was wrapping around how do we support students to become independent lifelong learners, I realized that my question for where I wanted the teachers and the students to be had to shift, to really think about, in the day of COVID-19, how do we support adults as adult learners, as well as students as independent learners? Because what I realize is that oftentimes in the classroom situation where we weren't worried about not having students in our classroom, much of the instruction was coming from the teachers. And so there was not a situation of co-creating learning. In the situation of co-creating learning, we start to empower students to become that learner and to become that independent thinker. They're thinking about their thinking, they're metacognitive in their process. They are creating and doing, they're constructing knowledge. In a situation where adult obviously is the lesson or the classroom is teacher centered, the adults are giving the information. Suddenly, when the teachers are removed from the classroom, they're having to readjust and learn. So these last 4 weeks prior to teaching has been working with adults as learners. And how do they see themselves as learners, and how can they reconstruct? I think the students are malleable. They're ready to go. They were ready to jump in. And it's every student seeing themselves as a learner, maybe not ennobled to do that quite yet, but at least seeing themselves as that. And then adults find themselves to learn as well as start to teach. So I had to figure out, how do we support teachers to teach through new platforms? How to create, understand, and apply new systems of learning. This is for teachers. How do we encourage and support all teachers to see the infinite possibilities of music education with large ensembles, performance in a different role? And how do we expand what music education has traditionally looked like within the educational system? These are huge, overarching thoughts and questions to even begin teaching and thinking about. And this could take generations to reshift and restructure what education would look like. And we had approximately 3 to 4 weeks. And I want to say that when this first hit, people were going through almost this change process of almost a resentment of how do they find themselves within it? Where is their worth? How do they value themselves? So they are going through the change curve and the change lines, as well as they're going through learning zones, their comfort zone. How do they learn? Where is their fear? They're negotiating, teachers are negotiating quite a bit to have this shift. So while I was so excited, because I was thinking, here we go, teachers, we can have this amazing creative process of students, I realized that we needed to step back and look at the teacher first, because we needed to support all these teachers and all of their possibilities and everything they could do with what they know, and to have them see and realize that they do contain all the tools to move forward. Again, so it's new systems of learning. That could have been new platforms. That could have been new ways to engage synchronously in the moment or asynchronously offline, and then putting videos out. There are just so many ways. I was thrilled because I was thinking at this point, in traditionally United States, most programs or many programs had been performance centered in music education. So then it shifts the trajectory of what music education might look like. How do we expand that then to really see everything that a music teacher can and should be teaching for students to make that whole musician? So it's a complete shift in re-envisioning the roles of students if they have traditionally been teaching in a teacher-centered role model. Teachers, families, schools, and systems. Suddenly, everything had to open up. Teachers had to be vulnerable to what they may or may not have known. They're no longer the sage on the stage in front. They are co-creating with their students. Students get to see themselves as a part of a process. And if it's really ennobling them to step in and be a learner and how they can be their own teacher, as well as finding themselves as supporting themselves and other peers. Families suddenly had to come into play and realize that the students were not just by themselves, but what can the families do to support the situation? That's challenging. Let's be real. There are homeless populations, there are food insecure situations where where students are truly just finding out where can they find a space to learn, where can they find food, how can they take care of themselves. That's challenging and gets in the way of any possible learning at times. But then also families where mother and father are employed and there are brothers and sisters in the household, there's not enough Wi-Fi for everyone to get on our devices. Then how do schools become that support and push to make sure that everyone is getting all the possible tools to truly give and be their best, and the entire system of learning from towns and cities to be supportive, as well as individual role models of the classroom teacher within there. It is a complete shift in re-envisioning of roles. So for music education, we really are thinking of how do we redefine the what, the where, the when, the how, and the why. That's really important. What are we going to teach? Because suddenly we're not getting as much time. Where is this going to happen within this platform that might be ephemeral to some? It's coming and going and not so fluid. When is this going to happen, and how do we juggle? Do we silo subject matter? How do we support every single teacher in the entire system? How are we going to do this? Is it going to be simple, do this, take this information and no application? And then, or are they going to allow for this creative opportunity where they can set the students up to begin to think of, here is your seed of an idea. What can you do? How can you extend yourself into it? And how can you see yourself connected into this? And why are we doing that? That's so important. But here's the most important part. Who is the focus of the learning? Is it about the student, or is it about the teacher? Is it about the system? Is it about a final product? And I think that that's so important, because the goal of this really is to ennoble those students to be that powerful, independent learner. And that means that just shifting a little bit of asking questions, providing opportunities for them to see that they are truly independent learners, and that even if it has not been enacted yet in the student, that independent learner can take a seed of an idea, and we can trust them, no matter the age, to grow and create something beyond themselves. Ideally, the classrooms we want to see right now are engaging. How do you engage the learner to find you online, number one? How do you engage that learner to be a part of the process? How do you entice them and pull them in to ask questions and to find themselves within a learning content? How do we get them to create? Because inside that creating, students start to construct their knowledge, and they have that ownership of knowledge of which no one can ever take away from them. The moment a child begins to create something, they own that knowledge for life. And that's where we hope the trajectory of this education is shifting for the students at this time in San Diego Unified, so they can find themselves as independent learners. Andreas Schleicher had said that the past was about delivered wisdom and the future is about user-generated wisdom. And boy, are we there right now. How do we get students to have that user-generated wisdom? Because what is very important is that we know that when they can think and they have these creative constructs and they can think about their learning and they're persisting through it, their emotional learning increases, their social connections increase, and all they get to experience and do. Because our goal truly is to create independent, lifelong learners. And we are planning for that next unknown. And if we support them for the next unknown, that variable of X, what happens is they are ready to learn and ready to construct their knowledge for lifelong learning. Thank you.